Hello, hello. Suzanne Dibble here, data protection law expert. Happy to be here on this glorious Monday to do a Facebook Live for those of you who've bought the pack and are still working through it. So I will wait for a little while to see who's going to join us. And if there's one person, I'll be very happy to answer your question. If there's 100 people, I'll be very happy to answer your questions. So if you've got any questions, this is for people who've bought the pack. Maybe you're working through it. Maybe you've had a subject access request, don't know what to do with it. Maybe you've had a right, someone request a right to be forgotten, not sure what to do with that. If you've got any questions at all about how to implement the pack or otherwise, then post them here and I'll be answering them for you. Just to say, actually, this will be the last Q&A. Actually, I might squeeze one in on Friday, but then I will be taking a break for at least the following 2 weeks. Then I'll probably do a couple of weeks more, and then I'll be taking another little break. So I'll post a schedule in the group of when I am going to be doing these live Q&As so that you'll know when you can come on and ask any questions that you have. But please do, I must promote them more in the group actually, because people are still asking lots of questions in the group and other people are answering those questions, and that's all very well. If those people actually know what they're talking about, then fantastic, because they're helping me out. But of course the problem is if they don't actually know what they're talking about. So I must promote these Q&As more so that it's just a really efficient use of my time, obviously, for people to come onto the calls and ask me questions a lot quicker for both parties, just to be able to note the time in the diary, come on these calls and ask the question, rather than posting it in a Facebook group. And I don't get to see all of those posts in the Facebook group because of the way the algorithm works. So if you have a question and want to make sure that it's an expert who's answering it and that you're going to get that question answered, then come on to these live Q&As and I'll put a schedule of them in the Facebook group for the summer so that you know when they are. Good morning, Paula. Nice to see you. Anyone got any questions? Do post away if you have. Now, while I'm waiting for those questions, actually, I'll just update you on a few things. I'm going to be doing a live webinar on Wednesday, so we're going to be getting some... thank you, Ben, for your comment. Your lives are great. Thank you. We're going to be doing a live webinar on Wednesday at 10 a.m. UK time. So we'll be sending emails about that today and posting in the group about it. And really that's about the fact that I've been out and about, talking at summits, being at various other business events where I've been talking about GDPR. And what struck me is that actually most business owners think that they're GDPR compliant until they talk to me and they realise that they're not. So it's really a webinar looking at, we've had just over a month since GDPR came into force, and it's really about, you think you're compliant, well, actually, are you compliant? And looking at 3, possibly might squeeze in 4 key areas where I've observed that people who think they might be compliant really aren't yet compliant. So hopefully, even for those of you who've watched all my videos, got the pack, implemented that, there still might be some nuggets that you can take from that. And of course, if you haven't watched all my videos and got the pack, then definitely be on that webinar. That's going to be on this Wednesday at 10 a.m. and we'll be sending information out about that. That'll be a really good one to make the time to watch. And yes, a couple of other things just to pick up on while waiting for questions to come in. I've still been doing lots of radio interviews. I was talking to one of the BBC radios, can't remember which one, on Friday, and I've got another one tomorrow. And GDPR, still lots of interest in the media about GDPR, and particularly, of course, the data breaches that amazingly, is still coming out with great regularity. And what has been interesting, actually, for preparing for my webinar on Wednesday, I've taken a really detailed look at the ICO enforcements over the past few months, and it's really revealing, actually, the approach that the ICO take to enforcement. So I'll be sharing a bit more about that on the webinar as well. And also I think that people, certainly people who've been in the group a long time, who've watched all the webinars, who've been through the pack, and you might have done your data inventory and you've got your privacy policy in place, and hopefully your cookie policy as well, maybe even processor agreements where you need them. But I think the focus now needs to shift to making sure that you're ready when you do have a subject access request or there is a data breach. Because again, certainly talking to a number of businesses over the past months, when they have had that data breach, they've been completely all over the place. They haven't known what to do. It's really caused them a huge panic. So I think the more that you can preempt that and have policies and procedures in place for that, not just my policies, and my data breach record, but actually really understand what you need to do in those circumstances, I think that will be very useful for you. And I will actually do a little bit more on that in terms of the practicalities. I think what I'll do is I'll arrange an interview with a business that has suffered a data breach and talk about the issues that they faced with that. So that's one for the list. But any questions, guys? This is a Q&A rather than me just talking at you. So any questions, do post them. What else can I tell you about? Oh, yes, we are working on putting together a CPD accredited course for business owners and for employees. So that's something that I'll be looking at over the summer. I'm hoping to be able to announce my GDPR book deal very shortly, which will be great. And also we are, what's the other thing that I'm working on? Something else. There's something else as well. So there's lots going on over the summer, and we'll be looking to do lots of exciting things in September when people are back. Then of course we've got the changes to PECR to look forward to. So that will be, we don't know when that's going to be, but that will be sometime next year. Oh, goody, a question's come in. Let's see. Julie says, quick question about data transfers to third countries between a processor to a non-EU sub-processor. Do you still need a processor agreement and standard contractual clauses, but which one? Controller to processor. A bit confusing, as I see that for a processor to sub-processor, there's still only an unapproved draft. Yes, you posted that in the group, Julie, didn't you, actually? Because I do remember looking into that, and you're quite right. There is only an unapproved draft. There's lots of imperfections in the current legislation, and this is just one example of them. But yes, if you have a processor transferring data to a non-EU sub-processor, then yes, you would still need to have those mandatory processor clauses, whether that's in a separate agreement, a data processor agreement, or in the actual service agreement itself. You need those mandatory clauses. And yes, question mark over the standard contractual clauses. Obviously, that's just one way of safeguarding. And if they're not if the sub-processor isn't in a country that has an adequacy finding, if it's not part of the privacy shield, if you can't put standard contractual clauses in place, then you're looking at the derogations. So do have a look through the derogations, because it might be that some of those apply, and if not, then it's potentially consent. The problem is that with the standard contractual clauses, there are terms in there that says that you can't amend those terms. So even if you did try to amend them to manoeuvre them so that they're suitable for sub-processors, I'm not sure that would work, actually. So that might be one for the ICO, Julie, although they'll probably say we can't answer that, I suspect. But I think your safest route at the moment, which isn't ideal, if you can't fall under another derogation, would be to get consent. There isn't a set of approved documents that you can use between a processor in the EU and a non-EEA sub-processor. but you will absolutely need the minimum processor clauses. Okay, any other questions? That was a good one. Any other questions? Or you can just tell me about your day. I think it's about 30 degrees here at the moment, so that's nice. We just had our team meeting in the sun. Well, outside under the parasol actually, but you know, nice to be looking at a blue sky. So yes, some British summertime when we actually get it is fantastic. Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen that often, but we're getting a good spell of it at the moment. Okay, any other questions? What else can I tell you usefully? For those of you who've just joined, look out for the invite to the webinar that we're running on Wednesday, which is a kind of a, 1 month's gone by, are you really compliant type webinar. So watch out for that. Feel free to share that with any business groups that you're in, or any business owners who, whether they think they're compliant or not. As I say, that's what struck me when I've been talking to people at conferences and things like that, is that they think they're compliant, but when I ask them a few questions, they're really not. So that's the webinar on Wednesday. Right, so Julie says, does it make a difference if the processor is not based in the EU, but in a country that is on the list of the adequate privacy protection level? So they're in a country that's had an adequacy finding. No, it doesn't. Logically, it shouldn't make a difference, because really the adequacy finding puts the processor in the same place as if they were in the EEA. It's really the issue of the sub-processor that you've got, isn't it? Bent says, so it's not enough that the EU-based processor declare that they have the required contracts with the sub-processors, but we can ask for consent to send the data to non-secure countries. Yeah, so if the EU-based processor says that they have the required contracts with the sub-processors, I would want to see them, firstly. Then saying that, they might not want to show you the name of the sub-processors if it's, for commercial reasons. But you do have to approve that transfer to sub-processors, but they might have asked you to do a general approval rather than a specific approval, which is allowed. But in that, I'd still want to see the terms of the agreement, even if the name was blanked out. So, remember, it's the data controller's obligation to only use processors that are compliant, and part of a processor being compliant is that they have that agreement in place with their sub-processors. So, belt and braces would be absolutely to see that agreement. If they really won't provide it to you, then I would have a warranty and an indemnity in the agreement that you have with the processor, that specifically says they've got that in place and that it's valid and GDPR compliant, and that if it's not, they will indemnify you for any loss that you suffer. But I prefer, my first port of call would be to get a copy of the actual agreement. Elaine says, gorgeous weather here too. Good, I thought that was a question then, Elaine, but I'm very glad that the weather is gorgeous with you there, wherever you are. Dan says, do you offer legal packs for all T's and C's and privacy terms, etc. for consulting? Yes, I do, Dan. It's my Small Business Legal Academy, and it is very comprehensive. It has a number of different types of terms and conditions for use, whether you're a consultant, a limited liability company, a sole trader. There's about 6 or 7 different options in there. And if you go to www.smallbusinesslegalacademy.co.uk/SBLA, which stands for Small Business Legal Academy, then there is the sales page. It tells you exactly what's included in that. There's about 70 or even 80 now, 80 documents in there. That's pretty much every document I can think of that will help a small business. There's also an 8-week course that guides you through the types of legal issues that are likely to affect your business, and you can go through that as the emails come out, or store them and go through them at whatever time you like, and then those emails direct you to the relevant resources. If you've already bought the pack, Dan, then we do have an upgrade price because the Small Business Legal Academy includes the GDPR module. So if you email the support@suzannedibble.com and just say that you want to upgrade, then we'll send you the link for the upgrade price. Okay. Elaine says, you mentioned a warranty, etc. Is there wording for this in the pack? Is it in the processor agreement? I think it is actually. I think there's an indemnity in there, which is probably wide enough to cover that. So, yes, I think it is in there. Check it out, Elaine. In the processor agreement, I'm pretty sure there is a heading towards the end, indemnity, and I'm pretty sure that it covers all areas of GDPR compliance. Claire says, is it okay just to have a pop-up notice for first-time visitors that then auto disappears that states your site uses cookies and a link to the cookie policy? So yes, you can use a pop-up. Are you saying that is your question that it only pops up the first time that they come onto the site? Is that the question? Or is it more the fact that it disappears? But yes, cookie pop-ups are fine as long as you get that, the click. I mean, the question you've got to ask yourself is what happens if they click no? They don't want to have the cookies. Have you got the technology to stop those particular cookies firing and they can continue to browse the site, or are you going to block the site for them? So there's lots of, allegedly, I've not worked them all out, so I can't say for sure, but there's lots of plugins and etc. that will provide you with a GDPR compliant cookie pop-up notice. And on that note, for those of you that don't have a pop-up, my view is don't worry about that. I don't have a pop-up on my site. I just have a prominent banner that tells people that I'm using cookies, and the wording that says that by continuing to browse, they accept the use of cookies. In fact, or do I have a cookie bot? I think I did have cookie bot on there, which is an example of one of the plugins that you can get. And in fact, Nathan Haig, who posted in the group, is working on a really great plugin. I think he keeps refining it and refining it. So I think we're nearly there with that. But I'll be once I've tested it and check it does what he says it can do, I'll be very happy to promote that in the group. But certainly for the time being, I'm relaxed that I have a cookie policy. It's in a prominent place in my site. I don't have a pop-up at the moment, and I'm personally fine about that. I think if having a pop-up is a good idea, but is every person who doesn't yet have a cookie pop-up on their site going to get fined? No. Also, with the revisions to PECR that are coming into force next year, the emphasis is going to be very much on browser settings rather than pop-ups, because I think people accept that having to get rid of these, no one reads it, and having to get rid of these pop-ups is just really annoying. So there's going to be more of an emphasis on the technology behind the scenes than on the pop-ups. Okay. There is no option to... so Claire's saying about the cookie pop-up, there's no option to click no. My screen's just gone really dark. I hope you can still see me. Can't hardly see the questions. Why is that? Can you just put a little yes or no? Can you still see me? Has it gone very dark, or is it just at my end? Pop a little yes or no if you can still see me. It's just gone terribly dark. Oh, you can see me normally. Okay, great. Well, don't know why that is, but let me just see the questions here. Right, so Claire about the cookie pop-up says there's no option to click no. Do I need one? Well, it's how it's set up, Claire. If they don't click through it and it means that they just can't use the website, then that's probably fine for now, but keep it under review. Okay. Hi Barry, nice to see you. I'm going to wave at Barry. Barry is a very, very impressive businessman who I met at a it was Washington, wasn't it? Yannick Silver's Maverick event. And I met Barry and some of his business pals over there, and we had great fun in Washington. Right, Bent says, can I use the privacy notice from your pack on a Facebook page? You mentioned it could be good to have a privacy notice there. Yes, you can. I don't see why not. I'd have to read it through. I mean, sense check it and make sure that it's not, if it says by signing up on this site, then you'd need to, and you've got the name of your website on there, then you'd obviously need to change that to make reference to Facebook. But yeah, you can do that. Again, I don't think that anybody's going to get in any trouble if they don't at this point. This is all obviously arising out of that case, the German case that was going through the courts, where the ECJ ruled that Facebook page administrators are joint controllers with Facebook, and therefore in theory should have a privacy notice in place at the point that you're processing any data. And if you're actually processing data whilst that data is still on Facebook, then in theory you need to have a privacy policy, your privacy policy on Facebook. So yes, again, depends on your attitude to risk. I probably won't be adding one to mine. But yes, you absolutely can add one to your Facebook page, and yes, I'm sure with a little bit of tweaking, the one in the pack will be fine for that. Okay, sorry, just looking at other questions here. So Paula says, when you say prominent position, how prominent? We have it on the bottom of our page together with our other policies. Yes, there isn't definitive guidance on what prominent enough means. I would, I think, mine at the moment is at the bottom of my page. And am I worried about getting any kind of fine? Nope. Is it best practice to have it probably a banner across the top? I mean, it's always a good idea to look at what the ICO are doing and try and get it as near as possible to what they're doing. Until recently, I think they just had a small link. I think they might just now have put a banner across the top of the web page. But again, very low risk of, if anything, if suddenly the ICO get the resources to go and check every small business that doesn't have what they would say is prominent enough, then, that will be a miracle if they did. If you happen to be unlucky enough to be reported and they look into you, then chances are they'll say, here's what you need to do, and then you do it. So yes, I think that having it at the bottom is it's probably going to be fine. If you're a risk-averse type of person, then put it in a little bit more prominent place at the top. Look at what the ICO are doing and copy them. And from, I think last time I looked, it was a big bar across the top of the screen that pops up. So actually it doesn't pop up, it's just there. It's just across the top of the screen. Right. Julie says, sub-processor in a third country question. This is not new, right? It was the same in the directive as well. What have companies been doing with sub-processors in third countries until now, pre-GDPR? Yeah, it's a good question, Julie. I've been dealing with. Let's think a lot of the ones have been consent. A lot of the ones that I've been dealing with, they've gone to the derogation of consent. Mainly, a lot of BCRs in place, but obviously that's just intergroup transfers outside of the EEA. There isn't a perfect solution for it, Julie. We know the options. The one part of it is we know we need to have the mandatory processor clauses in there. That's one thing. The jurisdiction thing, we know what the safeguards are. It's just that there isn't a perfect solution in terms of there being those standard contractual clauses. So, yeah, I think there's a number of areas like that. For example, they clearly recognise that something needed to be done because there are draft processor to sub-processor outside of the EEA clauses, but they're just draft. So I'll actually look into why they stayed draft and let you know about that, because that's raised my curiosity a little bit now. But are you concerned because there's not a derogation that you can fall into, or are you just asking out of interest? Okay, Bent says, if the processor will not sign the contracts that I send or provide the subcontracts you mention, but I still trust them as a processor, can I ask the users for consent to use this processor anyway? No. So the two separate things are, firstly, you have to have those mandatory clauses in place. That's aside from any kind of consent. There has to be those minimum processor terms in place between with a processor, with a sub-processor, through that contractual chain to keep the data safe. The consent comes in when we're talking about transfers to third countries. Okay. So no, that doesn't solve your problem if they're reluctant to sign the contracts. Okay, any other questions? Struggling to see. I don't know why my screen's gone so dark here. Ben's saying it would be illegal even with... well, yeah, it's two different... Yes, it would be, because what GDPR says is that you have to have these particular clauses in place. And there's no opt-out provision if the data subject provides consent. So yes, you have to have those in place. Julie says the processor, I guess that means the processor is in an adequate country with a small sub-processor and basically one guy that provides customer service in the US and has access to the processor's database. Okay, let me just grab my book, Julie, and I'll read out the derogations, because I'm pretty sure there's one you can fall under. Hang on. Okay, so one of the derogations is that the transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the controller, or the implementation of pre-contractual measures taken at the data subject's request. So if you need that sub-processor to process in the way that it is doing, and that's necessary for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the controller, then you wouldn't need consent. That's a derogation in its own right. Okay, so I don't know if it falls under that, Julie. Let me know if that does. That could help you. Eva says, I went to your website, but I do not see the banner. Presumably, Eva, you're talking about cookie policies. As I just said, I just have a link at the bottom of each page of my website, and I'm quite happy with that at the moment. I might put in place a pop-up at some point going forwards, but at the moment, I'm happy. It depends what your attitude to risk is. If you, as I was saying, check out the ICO website, not my website, but the ICO website. Until recently, they just had a little link to it at the bottom. I think they've now got a banner that goes across the top of the page. So if you risk averse, then do what the ICO are doing, then you're not going to get any trouble. Okay, Julie, so just let me know about that point about the derogation, because that might help you. So if you need to use that sub-processor for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the controller, then that is a derogation for a transfer outside of the EEA. Oh, the tension, Julie. Will that help you? Let me know. Let me know. Okay. So any more questions while we wait for Julie to get back to us about whether that derogation is going to help her or not? Julie says, I think so, but now I lost you a bit. Oh, okay. So if I need it to perform my agreement with the controller, I don't need the standard clauses, only the DPA. Yes, correct, Julie. Yeah, so look at the derogations. They're in Article 49. So if you just Google GDPR Article 49 derogations, then or GDPR text, then it will pull up the text of the GDPR. The first derogation is explicit consent. The second is that the transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the controller. The third is the transfer is necessary for the conclusion or performance of a contract concluded in the interests of the data subject between the controller and another natural or legal person. The transfer is necessary for important reasons of public interest. The transfer is necessary for the establishment, exercise or defence of legal claims. The transfer is necessary in order to protect the vital interests of the data subject or of other persons. The transfer is made from a register, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, have a look at those. And but they are derogations, so you really should always look to have the standard contractual clauses in place where you can. Okay, right. Let's see. Bent says, thank you for expressing that you have a group here. Very concerned to do it right as a small and micro enterprise. You're so right. Yep, thank you. Right. Paula says, sorry, I need to go. You're very welcome, Paula. Thanks for popping in. The ICO website uses Civic Cookie Control version 8. It won't show any banner if you've previously clicked to say you accept cookies. Thank you for that, David. That's really helpful. I'm going to go and implement that right now, even though I am quite a risk taker. Okay, Kirsty says, also enjoying your Q&A in the garden. Super sunny. Good. Thank you for your continued support. You're welcome. What simple questions would you ask someone who says they are ready to make them check all is ready? Recheck all is ready. I'm not quite sure what you're saying there, Kirsty. Are you saying, I'm not sure. Are you talking about just other business people and talking about GDPR compliance or processes, or a little bit more detail there, Kirsty? But thanks for that, David. I'm going to go and grab a pen and write that down. So just bear with me 1 second while Kirsty expands on her last question. And I think everybody else would be wise to write that down as well. So hang on 1 sec. Right. Civic Cookie Control V8. And is that free, David, do you know? Let me know if that's free. That'd be helpful to let people know. Right, Kirsty, still not got the rest of your question. Let me try and guess. What simple questions would you ask someone who says they are ready to make the mirror check all is ready? I don't know. If you're saying to me, Kirsty, how do you tell if people are GDPR compliant? Oh, she lost signal at the critical moment. Okay. If it's processes you're talking about, because obviously there's an obligation on data controllers to ensure that processes are GDPR compliant, then there is a checklist in my pack called Processor Checklist. So you can go through that and make sure that they are compliant that way. And if you're talking about just generally other business people, send them on my webinar on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I'll be doing a webinar for people who might think they're compliant but probably aren't. So we'll be promoting that later today. So keep an eye out for that. David's saying Civic is not free. Do you have any idea, David, how much it is? Eva says the community edition is free. The others are paying. I guess that's for the cookie pop-up as well. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. I shall go and check that out. Great, okay, and I think we've answered Kirsty's question as well. Fabulous. All right, well, unless there's any more questions, we'll call it a day there. I think I will publicise these Q&As more because it would be good to get more people on them and more questions. And I will also publish the list over the summer because there will be a few breaks as we go through the summer. So I'll pop that on the pinned post at the top of the Facebook group as well, so that people can see when the Q&As are. But thanks for all your questions today. Whatever you're doing, enjoy the rest of this beautifully sunny day, and I'll see you very soon. Oh, someone snuck in. Sue says, sorry if it's somewhere already, what do you do if you have a Facebook business page? Okay, Sue, I did a video on Facebook pages recently. If you're asking about the case, the German business that was told to remove its business page, it didn't, and that's been trundling on for 7 years. And then there's recently been a court case. The ECJ have ruled that a Facebook page administrator can be a joint controller. If that's what you're talking about, Sue, then I did a video about that. So if you use the search box in the group and watch the video on that, that will tell you all you need to know about that, okay? All right, super. Well, thanks for your input, everyone. Thanks for your questions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, yes, good. Well, thanks, Claire, about the webinar. Wednesday, 10 o'clock webinar, or masterclass, as we like to call it. Masterclass on you think you're compliant, but are you really? So that's this Wednesday, 10 a.m. UK time. We're going to be promoting it in the group and sending some emails out. But please do share widely. Because I'm sure that if you've been in my group for some time and you are fairly well educated in GDPR, you have many frustrated conversations with other business people who think they know what they're talking about and really they don't. So share it far and wide so that we can continue to educate people in what GDPR compliance actually looks like. It's not just copying a privacy policy and popping it on your website. There's a lot more to it than that. So thank you again for your questions, and I'll look forward to seeing you, hopefully, some of you, on the webinar on Wednesday and in the group going forwards. So have a great day.